There comes a time in every soul's journey when the light within them begins to burn so fiercely that it cannot be hidden anymore. You don't need to shout it. You don't need to explain it. Something about you shifts, quietly, powerfully, divinely, and the people who once overlooked you, dismissed you, even mocked you, suddenly start to wonder, who is this person? Not because you tried to impress them, but because God touched your life in a way that made them look again. You walk into the room and their laughter dies, not because you silenced it, but because they feel something they can't name. A presence that wasn't there before. It's not pride, it's not ego. It's something sacred, something set apart. It's the echo of divine transformation. It's the weight of favor that cannot be faked. And now they're confused, intrigued, even a little unsettled, because they remember who you were, but they can't explain who you've become. What they don't realize is this: God has been working on you in the hidden places. While they were watching someone else, God was writing a story in your silence. While they were laughing at your weakness, God was strengthening your spirit. While they were counting you out, God was counting the days until your unveiling. You see, there is a mystery to the way God works. He doesn't perform in public until He's done crafting you in private. He doesn't anoint your name until He's stripped your soul of everything false. And when the time is right, He reveals you. Not to brag, not to boast, but to glorify what grace can do through a surrendered life. Now they're whispering, they're wondering, they're watching you closer than ever before. Not because you've become arrogant, but because something about your walk is now filled with purpose. Your speech is seasoned with weight, your silence carries wisdom, and your presence makes the atmosphere shift. They can't put their finger on it, but they know something is different about you, something holy. And here's the part that leaves them spinning. They can't figure out how you got here. They didn't see you being built. They didn't witness your pruning. They weren't present for your wilderness. They only see the glory. So they assume it must be luck, or deception, or timing. But what they don't understand is that this version of you is not man-made, it's heaven-ordered. They are crazy for you now. They want your wisdom, your presence, your favor. They chase your energy like moths to flame. But you're not the source, they just don't realize it. It's not you they're obsessed with, it's the God in you, the light that's too bright to ignore, the peace that disarms their chaos, the confidence that doesn't need a spotlight, the power that came through pain, and they don't know the price. They want the crown, but not the cross. They want the shine, but not the scars. And that's why they'll never fully understand you, because they didn't cry the prayers you cried. They didn't feel the abandonment you felt. They didn't carry the weight you carried, and they never had to walk where you walked. You are a walking miracle, an unfolding mystery, a testimony wearing skin. And while they try to categorize you, study you, or figure you out, the truth is, you are beyond explanation. Because God's hand is on your life, and His fingerprints are all over your transformation. So let them wonder, let them talk, let them be captivated by the change in you. Because it's not your name they're drawn to, it's the work God did in you. And that work is still unfolding. There's a sacred rhythm to the way God works. He does not expose what He is still shaping. He hides His greatest works beneath the surface, away from the reach of critics, enemies, and premature hands. That's why for so long you felt invisible. You weren't forgotten, you were hidden. There is a difference. Forgotten implies neglect. Hidden, on the other hand, implies protection, intention, purpose. You weren't being denied your moment, you were being prepared for it. Think of a seed buried in the soil. It looks like it has disappeared. It gets no praise, no attention, no applause. But beneath the surface, the most important process is happening. It's growing roots, strengthening its base, reaching downward before it ever reaches upward. If that seed were exposed too early to the sunlight, it would burn and die. Likewise, God kept you covered, not to hold you back, but to keep you alive until your roots were deep enough to handle the weight of being seen. There are people watching you now, trying to figure out how you became what you are, but they never noticed you before because they weren't meant to. God blocked their access to you while He was working on the parts they wouldn't understand. You felt overlooked in conversations, ignored in opportunities, undervalued in your relationships. But the truth is, their eyes were blind to you because heaven closed the curtain until your spirit was ready for the stage. You were being hidden in plain sight. The people around you thought they had you figured out. They judged you by the outward shell, not realizing what God was doing deep within. You were misunderstood, not because you were small, but because you were sacred, and sacred things are never thrown into the open. God hides them, like He hid Moses in the river, like He hid Joseph in a prison, like He hid David in the fields, like He hid Jesus in Nazareth. The greatest are often hidden the longest. And now, without you trying to force anything, people are starting to ask, who is this? Where did this come from? They're seeing the fruit, but they miss the root. They're amazed by your wisdom, your strength, your glow, but they weren't there for the breaking, the pressing, the prayers soaked in tears, and that's okay, because God didn't ask them to approve your process. He only asked you to trust Him in the dark. When God hides you, He is not punishing you, He is preserving you. He's keeping your identity safe from the opinions of people who would have destroyed your confidence before it had a chance to blossom. He's guarding your anointing from those who would have manipulated it. He's silencing your voice just long enough so that when you speak, it pierces like a sword and not like a whisper. So if you've ever wondered why you had to endure long seasons of silence, solitude, and spiritual obscurity, know this: you were hidden on purpose. And now that God is allowing people to see what He's been doing in you all along, it's not just your time, it's your appointed time. And no one can stop what heaven is now ready to reveal. One of the reasons people are so stunned by who you've become is because they know it wasn't supposed to be this way. They remember the pain you came through, the storms you faced, the betrayal that broke you, and the moments that should have destroyed you. By all human standards, you should have lost your mind. You should have given up. You should have stayed down. But here you are, stronger, wiser, glowing with a light they can't quite explain, and that's what unsettles them. Because your transformation doesn't make logical sense. It can't be traced back to some program, some mentor, or some lucky break. It didn't come from their approval or applause. What happened to you wasn't earned by effort. It was granted by grace. What you carry now is not the result of striving, but surrender. And that's what they'll never be able to copy. People expect growth to come from visible labor, but your transformation came through invisible encounters with God. It was the nights you cried out in your closet, the days you fasted in silence, the mornings you chose prayer over revenge, the seasons you gave when you had nothing left. They didn't see it, so they assume it must have been easy. But they're only looking at the harvest. They didn't live through the drought. That's why they're captivated by you. Because you walk with a kind of authority that can't be taught, a wisdom that wasn't learnt from books, a peace that isn't circumstantial, a favor that isn't fair. They see it, they feel it, and it drives them wild because it disrupts their understanding of how success should happen. You are a walking contradiction to their formulas. You are the proof that God's favor can do more in a moment than human strength can do in a lifetime. But don't forget, this transformation was not for vanity. It was for testimony. God didn't elevate you to show off your glory. He did it to put His glory on display through your life. You are a vessel that carries His victory, a canvas that displays His redemption, a living example of what grace looks like when it breathes on brokenness. You didn't change because you worked harder. You changed because you worshipped deeper. You didn't rise because you fought your way up. You rose because you knelt when no one was watching. And now that favor rests on you like a garment. You don't need to beg for attention. It finds you. You don't need to chase platforms. They come looking for your voice. Because heaven has certified you, and no man can reverse what God has signed. So let them wonder, let them gossip, let them guess. They'll never figure it out, because what happened in you wasn't from earth, it was from the throne. And the transformation they see now is not the result of your greatness. It is the evidence of God's hand resting gently, powerfully, undeniably upon your life. There is a kind of peace that cannot be faked. It's not the quietness of lips, but the stillness of the soul. You walk into a room, and though you say little, your calm commands attention. Not the kind that shouts or demands to be heard, but the kind that stills the air. Because it's not coming from you, it's coming through you. That peace is not ordinary. That peace is spiritual. It unsettles the ones who don't have it. It disorients those who are used to controlling the atmosphere with noise, drama, and dominance. When you enter, their chaos feels exposed, not by your words, but by your presence. People are drawn to you now, but not for the reasons they admit. On the surface, they compliment your patience, your gentleness, your composure, but underneath that admiration, there is a discomfort, because the peace you carry highlights the restlessness in them. You became what they don't know how to become. You chose silence where they chose shouting. You chose prayer when they clung to control, and that difference echoes loudly. What they don't understand is that your peace wasn't handed to you. It was forged in the fire. You had to cry your way into it, fight your way into it, release things you thought you couldn't live without. You didn't just wake up one day full of serenity. You went through spiritual surgery. God stripped you of the need to be understood, the urge to retaliate, the hunger to be right. He emptied you of fear, piece by piece, so that He could fill you with stillness. And now that you walk in it, they don't know what to do with you. Their confusion isn't about what you say, it's about what they feel when they're near you. They can't control your energy because it doesn't come from them. They can't rattle you with gossip, manipulation, or chaos because you no longer operate at their frequency. You've been recalibrated to heaven's wavelength. You move by discernment now, not emotion. You wait instead of rush. You listen instead of argue, and it drives them mad. Not because you're wrong, but because they're no longer in control. You see, spiritual peace is confrontational, not because it attacks, but because it reveals. When someone is ruled by internal storms, your stillness becomes a mirror they didn't ask for. It reminds them of how far they are from rest. It stirs up the anxiety they've buried under noise, and sometimes, instead of pursuing the peace you have, they'll project their discomfort onto you. They'll call you fake, distant, too quiet. But what they really mean is, you're free, and they don't know how to be. And yet, despite all this, they still orbit around you. Because something in them knows you've tapped into something real. They crave the stillness they mock. They envy the groundedness they pretend to dismiss. They may never say it, but your peace has become a lighthouse to their drifting soul. And deep down, they know you didn't get here by chance. You got here because you surrendered to a God who calms storms not just around you, but within you. That's why your peace isn't just personal, it's spiritual. It isn't passive, it's powerful. And as they continue to spin in their chaos, they can't help but be captivated by the stillness that follows you like a shadow, a stillness not born of pride, but of presence. God's presence. There's a sacred kind of misunderstanding that surrounds those who are chosen. People see your strength, but never suspect your scars. They admire your elevation, but are unaware of the excavation it took to get there. And when God begins to raise you, when His favor starts to become visible, many assume it came easy. They assume the glow was natural, the wisdom was inherited, the strength was always there, but they never saw the nights you questioned everything, the hours you spent on your knees, the moments you were ready to give it all up. They underestimated you not because you were weak, but because your journey was invisible. And now that you walk with the clarity of purpose, they're amazed, yet oblivious to the cost of that clarity. They want the fruit, but they don't want the famine that shaped it. They want the overflow, but not the seasons where you had to survive on crumbs. They want the authority you now carry, but not the breaking that built it. There are people whispering your name in rooms where you were once ignored, not because you changed your face, but because God changed your place. You've stepped into spaces that don't match their memory of you, and it unsettles them, because in their version of the story, you were supposed to stay small, quiet, unsure. They never accounted for the fact that God would choose you to do something great, that He would take the most wounded in the room and make them the most powerful, that He would take the rejected and make them the cornerstone. But they weren't there when you were being crushed. They didn't see the battles that left you breathless. They didn't witness the spiritual war that took place in your mind, your heart, your home. You walked through valleys that would have killed others, and you did it with no fanfare, no audience, no one but God walking beside you. And that's what makes your calling so weighty. It wasn't assigned by men, it was carved out by fire, tested in isolation, and confirmed by the hand of God. You carry something they can't put language to. It's not charisma, it's not charm, it's depth, and that depth was purchased through pain. That's why you don't walk arrogantly, you walk soberly. You know what it costs to be who you are. You know the loneliness, the self-doubt, the spiritual battles that came with it. You've lost people along the way. You've lost parts of yourself along the way. But what remained was refined. What remained was pure. What remained was real. And now they look at you with amazement and confusion. They ask how. They ask why. They try to trace the path you walked, hoping to find shortcuts, but there are none. What you carry was not taught, it was forged, and the ones who underestimated your process are now watching God elevate what they dismissed. Let them marvel, let them whisper, let them guess. They will never fully grasp the cost of your calling, and that's okay, because the calling was never meant to be understood by everyone. It was meant to be obeyed by you. There's something about you now that makes people pause. It's not just your presence, it's the feeling they get when they try to come too close with the wrong intention. They might not understand it, but they feel it. A barrier, a wall, a shield, not one made of ego or pride or attitude, but something unseen, something divine. It's the protection of God wrapped around your life like invisible armor, and whether they can explain it or not, they sense it. This protection isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. but it makes its presence known in moments that matter. When people plan to use you, it repels them. When someone tries to lie on your name, their words fall flat. When they plot to break your confidence, the very atmosphere blocks their energy, and they walk away confused, because by all natural reasoning you should be hurt. You should be crushed, you should be broken. But you're not. You're still standing. That's what stirs their curiosity and, in many cases, their frustration. Because they've seen others fall under the pressure you've survived. They've watched people collapse under half the weight that you've carried. And yet, here you are, unbothered. Not because you're stronger than them, but because God fights for you in ways they can't see. It's not just what you've overcome. It's what never even reached you. The traps that failed, the manipulation that fell apart, the gossip that didn't take root. You don't even know how much danger you've been saved from, because God removed threats before they reached your ears. And the people who try to attack you spiritually or emotionally, many of them don't understand why it didn't work, why they lost control, why you didn't fall apart. And so they say there's something about them. But it's not something, it's someone. God's protection over your life has become your silent reputation. They may not respect your process, but they fear what surrounds you. They see the confidence you walk in, not arrogance, but assurance, and it unsettles them, because they live in a world of strategy, competition, and control. But you live under covering. And that covering makes all the difference. It shields you from attacks not meant for your soul. It protects your peace from being stolen. It preserves your name when others try to drag it through the mud. And every time they try to figure you out, they run into a wall they can't climb. That's why they whisper. That's why they stare. That's why they question. Because your survival, your growth, your joy, it's all unnatural. It's divine. God has placed a boundary around your destiny, and no matter how hard they try to trespass, something holds them back. They can come close, but not too close. They can observe, but not interfere, because heaven has declared your journey sacred, and no hand formed against you will prosper. So they back away slowly, confused but respectful. They may never say it, but deep down they know you are not walking alone. Someone bigger, stronger, and holier is walking beside you. And no matter how much they scheme, they'll never outrun the God who surrounds you. There's a hunger in every human soul for meaning, for purpose. And when someone walks in it, you can feel it even before they speak. That's what they see in you now. That's what makes them stare longer, lean in closer, and talk about you more than they should. It's not your appearance. It's not your achievements. It's that you move like someone who knows why they're here. And whether they admit it or not, that unsettles them. Because it reminds them of the void inside themselves. You see, purpose is powerful. It gives you direction when life is chaotic. It gives you peace when people are confused. It gives you strength when circumstances shake. And when others see that you're no longer tossed by every opinion or trend, it makes them curious. Because deep down, they long for that same stability, but they've spent years chasing applause instead of assignment, recognition instead of revelation, comfort instead of calling. And you carry what they crave but don't know how to see. They watch you make decisions rooted in faith, not fear. You don't panic the way you used to. You don't need constant validation. You're not desperate to be understood. That's not because life has been easy. It's because you finally aligned with your divine reason for existing. And the clarity you walk in now is a mirror to their confusion. Your peace convicts their chaos. Your focus highlights their distraction. Your purpose makes their aimlessness feel louder. And here's the part they'll never say aloud. They envy your certainty. They envy your spiritual posture. They envy how you can walk away from things they're still addicted to. How you can say no to opportunities that look good because you're waiting for what God said. They don't know the cost. They don't know the prayers. They just see the fruit, and it tastes like something they've been starving for. But purpose doesn't come cheap. You had to die to your own plan. You had to lay down your desires. You had to go through loss, isolation, and pruning. God had to break you free from things that looked like blessings, but were really traps. He had to close doors you begged Him to open. And now that you've been refined, purified, and aligned, you carry weight. Not weight that burdens, but weight that influences. Your voice hits different. Your presence shifts rooms. Not because you're trying, but because you're walking in purpose. That purpose makes you powerful without needing a platform. It makes you magnetic without needing attention. People are drawn to you without knowing why. They follow your words, they mimic your ways, they echo your ideas, but they don't realize that what they're chasing is not you. It's the sense of purpose that you carry. You've become a mirror, a reminder, a representation of what it looks like when a person lets go of the world and holds on to God. And even those who pretend not to care can't help but watch, because something in them is still searching, still empty, still wondering, why can't I live like that? And every time they cross paths with you, it stirs something deeper inside of them, a whisper, a longing, a question, not about your beauty, not about your lifestyle, but about your soul. They wonder where your fire comes from. They wonder what your secret is, but you know it's not a secret, it's surrender. And that surrender birthed the purpose they now crave. There is a difference between inspiration and conviction, and you, whether you realize it or not, have become the cause of both. Some people leave behind admiration when they walk away. You leave behind reflection, not because you try to, but because your presence now carries the weight of truth, a truth that exposes without accusation, a truth that unsettles without even speaking, and those around you who once felt superior, indifferent, or dismissive now find themselves questioning everything when you enter the room. They say you're glowing, they say you've changed, but what they don't say, what they can't say, is how uncomfortable that change makes them feel. Because when you carry the Spirit of God inside you, it causes a holy discomfort in those who are resisting their own transformation. Your words are few, but they cut through excuses. Your peace isn't loud, but it quiets pride. Your stillness isn't passive, it confronts everything fake and shallow. You don't need to point fingers. You don't need to preach. You don't need to expose anyone, because your life, your walk, does that all on its own. The way you live, love, forgive, trust, and persevere, it becomes a living sermon, and while some will applaud it, others will shrink from it. Not because you're judging them, but because the truth in you confronts the lie in them. That's what makes them wrestle in silence, why they sometimes distance themselves from you, not because you did anything wrong, but because your spiritual maturity reminds them of their own delay. Your strength reminds them of their weakness. Your humility challenges their pride. Your self-restraint highlights their indulgence. They want what you have, but they don't want to pay the same price. So they stare from a distance, fascinated, envious, convicted, and yet that conviction is not cruelty, it's grace. God is using your life to speak to theirs. He is turning your obedience into a mirror for their rebellion. He is taking the quietness of your spirit and letting it thunder into the places where they've ignored His voice. You have become the very sign they once asked for, a sign that the way they're living is too small, a sign that there's more to life than appearances, a sign that God still speaks, still transforms, and still chooses the humble. What they don't realize is that you never asked for this. You didn't wake up one day and decide to be a walking conviction. You just surrendered. You just said yes to the breaking, yes to the refining, yes to the pruning. And now, the fruit of that surrender is not just favor, it's impact. The kind of impact that doesn't fade with trends, the kind that makes people remember their conscience. You've become the interruption they didn't know they needed. Not because you're better, but because you're different. Not because you're flawless, but because you're faithful. And that difference, the spiritual distinction in your life, makes people take inventory of their own soul. So if you've noticed people treating you differently, pulling away or acting strangely when they're around you, don't be discouraged. Don't assume you've done something wrong. It might be that your presence now carries the light they've been running from. And when light meets darkness, the first reaction is discomfort. But that discomfort is holy. It's necessary. It's the beginning of their awakening. Let God use your life. Let Him continue writing His truth across your actions, your choices, your silence. Because even if they don't say it, they're watching, they're thinking, they're convicted. And that conviction, if they choose it, could lead them to the same freedom you now carry. They wonder who you are now, but they didn't wonder when you were crying alone. They didn't wonder when you were abandoned, broken, overlooked. But now that God has raised you, now that His fingerprints are visible on your life, they can't help themselves. They talk, they question, they orbit around you, because they see something they cannot name, a power they cannot grasp, a transformation they cannot copy. And you know the truth. It wasn't your strength. It wasn't luck. It wasn't them. It was God, His mercy, His covering, His wisdom, His purpose. You simply said yes. You surrendered when no one else would. You followed when no one else believed. And now they're crazy for you. Not because of who you are, but because of who He is in you. So keep shining, keep walking, keep speaking only when led, because the mystery that surrounds you is divine, and no man can explain what only heaven can create.